for decades, as long as I've been in the sport, everybody's been saying, who's the next Joe Weider? The answer is simple, that there will never be another Joe Weider.
Well, I would definitely have to say Joe plays an extremely important position in bodybuilding, because you mentioned something earlier, it's true. You can take every fad, every fitness fad that's ever come down the pike, and you can go, you know, the Pilates and then the core training and the Swiss ball trail. Eventually it's gonna all come back to weight resistance. And Joe was smart enough in that he marketed that, and he made it appealing, and he made it sexy, and he made people wanting to do it, not only men, but women as well.
You know, Joe Weider, of course, the Weider magazines, Muscle and Fitness, and then later on Flex. I was reading that as a kid, you know. And after my first pro win, I went out to California, actually met Joe and did the photo shoots. And I was surprised how hands-on he was, especially at the photo shoots. And you know, as far as positioning the physique and getting the best angles and so on out of your posing, the guy's an expert. And at 70+ years old, he had the enthusiasm for bodybuilding of a 18-year-old that's just started training, which was amazing. I mean, the guy was multi-millionaire, very successful. He didn't even need to be doing all that, but he did it because he loved it. And you know, Joe's been a great help with me, and he understood my personality, and he didn't put any pressure on me to, you know, to move to the States and so on. He let me do my own thing. So, I mean, I've got a great respect for Joe.
I think the thing with Joe is you have to ask him for what you want and continue to ask him. And if you do, you know, he comes around. And he's always been good. Basically, you know, some people say, oh, Joe didn't pay me enough, or they have misgivings about certain things. But, you know, I think about the whole relationship with Joe. Basically, I got a lot of great publicity with Joe. Even though at the time I didn't know I was on protein cans all over the world, it turned out to be very positive for me, even though we didn't get paid for stuff like that. But he has always given me advertising space. Joe has always been one not to give people things directly, but to give them opportunities. And I know a lot of people have missed out on those opportunities. But it's not Joe's fault if you have, you know, you didn't take advantage of what was there. I managed to take pretty good advantage of what was there.
Of course, I read about Joe Weider in all the magazines and realized that, you know, he was like the godfather of bodybuilding, and everyone had to kind of go through Joe Weider to have success in bodybuilding. And, you know, there was a lot of talk about Joe Weider when I went to Muscle Beach. Everyone winning the USA would talk about, oh, you know, maybe the chance to get a Weider contract.
When I first met Joe Weider, I just thought that, you know, it was like meeting. I don't know how it feels to meet God, but I felt like, you know, God had a lot to do with it. So for me, it was like I was almost in the presence of a God. You know, it was one of those moments to where you almost don't want to say anything. You just want to listen. Because, you know, everything, every voice, every tone, every pitch that came out of that spirit of being, you know, was of strength and knowledge and wisdom, and that was a moment that lives with me now.
I will tell you this: Joe is truly a father of bodybuilding, and he was very paternalistic with the bodybuilders, a father figure. He loved the bodybuilders, and he was just a very positive influence on all of us. Always, you know, always looking for the detail. I remember him on photo shoots, you know, and he would oversee these photo shoots. Even after he'd been wildly successful, he would personally show up to oversee these photo shoots, make sure everything was perfectly in place. In terms of my interaction with Joe, was always one of respect. I will tell you that, you know, there were bodybuilders that would grumble, you know, about how Joe treated them because they felt that they deserved to be given something by Joe. Joe was never that type of person. He was like a football coach. He would not give you the touchdown, but he would give you the football and tell you to run. And you know what? That's all that a person can ask for, is an opportunity. Give me the football and let me run with it.
There's been a lot of heavy influential people in our industry. Obviously, Joe Weider and the late Ben Weider, that goes without saying. I mean, their contributions have continued to spur new development in our sport.
I had a very clear understanding of my father's vision for bodybuilding because since I was a relatively young boy, I traveled with him. He took me on trips around the world with him when he would go to meet with international dignitaries, government officials, sports officials, and try to pursue his goal for bodybuilding. And he would have to explain what it was in those meetings. So from a young age, I was exposed to his vision. And I would say it's really twofold. One is he really wanted to give a legitimacy to bodybuilding. When he got started with Joe, bodybuilding was for the most part kind of a sideshow demonstration at the end of a weightlifting contest. And they really wanted to give bodybuilders a legitimacy and the respect of a proper sport in and of itself. Which was why the pursuit of Olympic recognition was so important to him. Because in sport, I suppose that's the ultimate seal of approval that yes, this is a sport to be respected. So the first thing was he wanted to give bodybuilding and bodybuilders legitimacy and respect as sportsmen and as athletes.
Joe Weider kind of like the George Lucas of bodybuilding. And all the bodybuilders take on myself, but Joe saw me, and Joe shared his pain with me because Joe had a tough upbringing. But Joe knew that I needed father advice. I needed like a mentor. And he took me under his wing because he knew that if I did what he told me, he was going to promote me, that I could have been the best in the sport. So he was like a father figure, he was a friend. He cared for me. He's the one that kept me motivated and gave me a chance knowing that I have a career. It's not like I have to win the Olympia or win the universe twice and then retire. I never wanted to go back to Brooklyn, open a store, open a gym. I wanted to continue long as I can for because I love bodybuilding and eventually go in the film business. So Joe was a huge factor with that.
Well, Joe, honestly, he is the godfather of bodybuilding. I mean, no doubt. I moved to the United States because, actually, of Joe's magazine. I mean, you know, back in the days when, you know, I came in, I was born in Lebanon, and the first time I saw a magazine was 1971, 72 in Beirut. And, you know, Muscle Builder Power at the time. It had Arnold Schwarzenegger on the cover. Flank was two. Beautiful girl. You know, Arnold came to America in 1968. I was still in school, and I started to build my own foundation to become a bodybuilding champion. And so, yeah, you see, the factor of Joe Weider reached me in Lebanon. So I picked up that magazine. What's funny, I was supposed to go to see that movie, The Good and the Bad and the Ugly. And Clint Eastwood, Lee Van Cleef, whatever. And so my little brother was with me, and I told my brother, I said, you know what? Let's forget about this movie. I want to buy this magazine. I was just totally liked it. So I purchased the magazine, forgot about the movie, and I walked home. It's like a couple miles. It's all because of Joe.
The IFBB is the organization of integrity and character. You know, that is Ben Weider's name.
Joe Weider's not a guy that you can sum up in a sentence. Joe Weider's one of those guys like to bodybuilding. He's like what Malcolm X and Martin Luther King was to the civil rights movement. I mean, he's like what JFK was as president of the United States. He's an iconic figure that you cannot put his body of work on one sheet of paper because he was so many things to so many different people. I mean, he came with a vision. He not only accomplished, you know, one of his goals in terms of starting this publishing company, which is called Weider Enterprises, but he gave birth to and spawned numerous careers that, you know, were able to allow these athletes to become more than just bodybuilders. I mean, I think Arnold Schwarzenegger said it best. I mean, this is a guy that, Joe Weider notwithstanding, would have still been in Austria, and he would have just been a guy with a funny last name. He was able to, through his work with Joe and mentorship from Joe, go on to do great things as an individual. And those things were paid forward to inspire people like Lou Ferrigno. And, you know, Arnold says, you know, guys like Reg Park, who were inspired by Joe Weider. Joe Weider's inspired so many people in so many different areas and ethnicities. I mean, Reg Park was South African, and Sergio Oliva won the Olympia 3 times, was from Cuba, and Arnold was from Austria, and Franco Colombo's from Sardinia, Italy. I mean, Dorain Yates is from England. I mean, this is a guy that impacted globally athletes as individuals who then inspired thousands and if not maybe millions through a vision and a dream. And through the help of his brother Ben Weider, they were able to form this thing called the International Federation of Bodybuilding. And through that, Joe's magazines, he's got supplement products, he had equipment, he created the video series, the Weider training principles. Again, he can't receive any more accolades basically, because at 90 years old, in selling his stake in the Weider publishing company back in 2004, he's done more with one lifetime than anybody can do with 2 or 3 lifetimes. And there's not a bodybuilder on this planet that's lifting weights that doesn't know who Joe Weider is and what he's meant to our sport and our industry. And for that, he'll forever be remembered. I think when Joe Weider is gone, definitely the landscape will change. His brother Ben passed away in 2008, and the bodybuilding world mourned a great loss in Ben Weider, but it still went forward. Joe Weider, as long as he has breath, people will continue to respect his idea and his foundation. When Joe is gone, I'm not sure that it's not going to get fragmented in some way. There's people coming into the game today that aren't historians of the sport that will never have the chance to meet someone like Joe Weider, who was a bodybuilder's bodybuilder. I mean, this is a guy that would go into a photo shoot and rub oil on the guys. I mean, he'd get his hands dirty. He would double check the photographer, the highly paid photographer getting the cover shots. He would correct them on their work, and that's what they do for a living. And yet, here's a guy like Joe he'd be in the gym working out next to you. So I think that we and the world is better off with Joe in it. And it will definitely change when he is no longer here. But the one thing that will live on beyond Joe and everyone, I believe, is that it started and ended with this guy, Joe Weider, in terms of getting America fit and then ultimately changing the world and the way they see bodybuilders and people that lift weights.
The thing you have to understand about Joe Weider is that Joe Weider wanted to be a great bodybuilder. He loves bodybuilders. Joe was a genuine fan, and he loved it, and he loved the idea of champions.
I think Joe Weider has had a tremendous impact on the life of many people. I mean, I grew up as a foster kid, and I think he became kind of like a father figure for me, and I have a lot to thank him for. And it was just, that prepackaged lifestyle thing he sold, it was just fantastic. I think it kind of taught a lot of young men discipline. Training gives discipline. So I think it's a great foundation. Look at Arnold, and he says it himself, like bodybuilding really changed his life. And look at me, I'm living my life. I mean, I'm living my dream. I'm very, very humble. I feel very, very humble about it. And Joe has definitely been such an inspiration.
Well, Joe Weider, I have the utmost respect for Joe Weider and Ben Weider. Even during that period where we had to go into court and take that action, I understood from the business side why they did it. Okay, but some people compare me to Joe Weider, and Joe, there's only one Joe Weider. I am so grateful to Joe Weider and even Ben Weider, because what they did together as a family business, and I have a tremendous passion for family business, being from a family business, okay? So what they accomplished, what they did was they built the #1 federation in the world, okay, Ben and Joe. And not only that, Joe built an incredible, successful publishing company. And I have the utmost respect for entrepreneurship. And I have always had the utmost respect for Joe Weider and Ben Weider.
Joe invented the industry, him and Ben and Betty, and they launched it, and they took it to places that, to a level that nobody ever thought possible. And Joe's not been running the magazines for a few years now, but he's still the living figurehead of what we do and the embodiment. He's still a bodybuilder, and you still talk to him. He gets a twinkle in his eye, and he'll tell you about the old guys, And Joe's perception of bodybuilding is like an artist, you know. I started bodybuilding to help me play soccer and track and field, so it was always a means to an end. So I've always thought of performance. Joe is more, it's an art, you know, the classical structure. And I've seen bodybuilders go into his office, he's never met them before, and he'll ask them to hit some poses. And then he'll make the pose perfect. Maybe he'll just turn the wrist inwards. Now, flex your intercostals when you do it. He knows every trick of the trade to make that better. You know, if you saw him at a photo shoot, he knows everything. He sees things that other people don't see. Now, your bicep looks better, just pull it in more. You've got long biceps, so, you know, you can go out a bit further. He sees it all like that. He is creative, you know. His perception of bodybuilding is from an artistic point of view, not from a, you know, how much can you bench? Yeah. And when Joe is still the living figurehead, but God forbid the day he's not here, the landscape is already changing. So we won't see another, you know, guy like this who is the father. You know, there'll be different levels and different developments, and you know, his life was lived to bring us to this, and he's done that, and it's very difficult to think of anybody. I mean, he gets a lot of criticism on a lot of things, but how many people in the world have changed the world to such an extent?
I can tell you from living it and seeing it firsthand my whole life, Joe and my father Ben were both motivated much less by the money. In fact, I don't think they even ever had dreams of making money when they started it. They believed in this. Joe is first and foremost a bodybuilder, more so than a businessman or anything else. He is a bodybuilder to his core. And my father was a missionary for bodybuilding. He traveled the world and wanted to spread the word, wanted to spread the gospel. So it's my hope that it's my most important hope that they're remembered in that way, as two men who had a great vision, who worked tirelessly for the right reasons, and made a big difference in millions of people's lives.